Hi everyone, and welcome to another week of the FYB Rugby Roundtable. We're edging closer to actual some rugby being played, so it's all great to see everything that's going on around your social media channels. It's great to see that people are enjoying rugby. And my guest this week is the head of rugby growth at the RFU, Ben Lowe. How are you, sir?
All good, thanks, Sean. All good.
And today we're gonna have a quick chat about the adult competition structure from 2022-2023 season. But first, how's the last year been for you?
Say again, Sean. Sorry, you just cut out there briefly.
How's the last year been for you?
Oh yeah, it's well, yeah, it's been a crazy year, hasn't it? I mean, I think considering there's been very little community rugby played, I've probably never been busier, never had more challenges come our way, really. But it's great to see that life generally is opening up, and we're starting to get some rugby back as well. So yeah, a lot more positive looking forward.
Good. So people might not know what the head of rugby growth is. Do you want to give us a quick job description of what you do within the RFU?
Yeah, sure. So work within the rugby development department as the head of rugby growth, or more recently termed the head of player experience. So we're one of 3 departments working in community rugby, and in our area there's four things we do in our team, really. The first is we look after community game competitions. So that's everything from National 1 on down in the men's game, and from the women's championship on down in the female game, plus some of the age grade competitions. And that's operating those competitions and developing them as well. Then we also have a team looking at player growth. So that's how we grow the game with certain audiences. So a lot of our women and girls work, for example, sits in that area. And then we have a small team looking at player retention, which has probably never been more important right now, as we've had the best part of a year off. And then finally, the team looking after what we call the player pipeline, which is effectively our work in education. So schools, colleges, universities, and how we transition some of those players into clubs.
So you're a very busy man, fingers in all the pies.
Yeah.
We should have a chat about player retention at some point for sure. But today we're going to talk about the changes to the adult competition structure from 2022-2023, which was announced about 2 weeks ago. Do you want to give us a quick brief rundown of what the main changes are going to be?
Yeah, sure. So I think the main changes really are that we've created some breaks in the season for player welfare. So at all levels, there'll be set breaks within the season, including a 2-week break at Christmas. Now, we know at some levels that happened anyway, but certainly right through the pyramid, that's been welcomed by players. Certainly, we're looking to put in more regular, rapid reviews of the competition structure, because it's been a long time since we've seen significant change, and that'll just help us to monitor it. And generally speaking,
when was the last change? When was the last change? When was the last change?
Yeah, small changes go on every year. So the divisional organising make tweaks in leagues, but the last major change it was well over 10-15 years ago. So it has been a long time since we've seen a significant restructure at kind of all levels. So some of the other key headlines and key changes are we've seen a reduction in the size of leagues generally, and that was to enable that more balanced playing program, so to allow breaks in the season for players to rest. And also we've seen the introduction of a revamped knockout competition at the end of the season for level 5 and below, with optional entry for clubs, which kind of breaks that league and cup clash that we've seen for many years, which has resulted in high walkover rates in the cup. We've also looked at some ways to introduce more leagues at different levels. So at level 3, so National 2, if you like, there'll be 3 leagues now. and then there'll be 6 leagues at level 5, 12 leagues at level 6. So you kind of seen what we would term a flattening of the pyramid, which is really based on reducing the travel to different clubs, which has been a big bit of feedback that players have given us around the time and distances they have to travel. So we've had to balance that with kind of keeping the level of competition at each level. So yeah, there's sort of a headline view of the key changes.
So this has been going on for a while. So how did sort of the process start, and what prompted it to happen now rather than a few years ago or in a few years' time?
Yeah, you're right. It's been well over 18 months of work across a number of groups and including some really dedicated input from volunteers and clubs and CBs as well as RFU staff. So I think why it's come about now, really, I think over the last 10 years, rugby has largely bucked the downward trend in team sports, but that has been pretty much due to the growth of the women's game and some growth in the age grade game as well. So I think the accepted view is that adult male game has been a bit more challenging. We've seen that players are playing less. Not that they want to play less, but there's just other lifestyle factors getting in the way.
Of course, yeah.
Whether it be social, whether that be work at the weekends, whether that be kids, etc. So that they are playing less, which means you need more players to put out a first team. On average now, we can track it through electronic match cards. On average, it takes around 43 players to fulfill a first 15 league season, which was around 25 about 15 years ago. So you're seeing that players can get pulled up from the lower teams. It has a knock-on effect down the club, which can lead to walkovers of the lower 15s. It can lead to teams dropping out of leagues and that kind of stuff. So the whole thing's quite connected. And I think that the feeling was that this evidence is now sort of staring us in the face a bit more because we have the electronic match cards and we can look at match frequency. And I think we need to make some changes to address those declining metrics. Otherwise, the game's going to be, it's not going to get better, put it that way. So the intention is all of the solutions that have been put in, the package of measures, are trying to stop those negative metrics, really. So, yeah.
Is the competition structure just the first piece of that? I guess the first piece of that puzzle to sort of...
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, competition. Yeah, competition is a major part of the adult male game, obviously, but it is one piece of the puzzle. You're right in terms of the overall adult male. And there's many other factors that we in the community rugby department will be looking at, whether that's quality of coaching or player transition from education and through the age grades. But this was the fix at the adult male end of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Look, we'll go down that rabbit hole one day soon, I'm sure. But so let's break it down for the clubs. We'll just sort of talk about what it's going to mean for each sort of the national leagues, the county leagues, and then for social rugby. But so for the national leagues, what does these changes mean to them specifically?
Yeah, so by the national leagues, you mean National 1 and National 2, North and South, as they are. So level 3 and level 4 in the game. So currently, all of those leagues are at 16 teams, and the recommendation that council have approved is to move them down to 14 team leagues. That's to build in those breaks in the season. I mean, we were getting quite significant feedback from DORs in particular and players at that level that the game can be a bit of a relentless slog of matches. It's quite physically intense at that, particularly level 3, just below the championship. So I think once you've got to balance the club sustainability and the number of home matches, that was largely accepted as the right decision. And at level 4, so National 2, there are 2 leagues, and the proposal that was agreed is to increase that to 3. So you're seeing 10 more teams come up into what we would term the national leagues at that level. They're the key changes at the top end, along with the Christmas break, the protected break weeks from league rugby in the season, and yeah, generally quite a simple solution there for the next few years, which we're going to keep an eye on clearly, because of what's happening above in the Premiership and Championship could have an impact on that in future years. So yeah.
So just on that, sort of the 10 teams being added into the national leagues, is that sustainable? Are the clubs sort of really on board with the fact that they could do that? Because it could be a sort of another big outlay of cash that they might not, especially over the last 12 months, they haven't sort of seen come in.
Yes, I think we've been. It's a good question. We've been very mindful of how COVID will impact some of these recommendations. In fact, it's the one main reason why the process has been quite long, because we originally the proposal was to launch a new structure in season 21-22, but that's been moved to 22-23 to allow clubs to recover, really, to see what clubs come out of this season in, and because you didn't want to create a new structure on the back of 2 disrupted seasons, really, with 19-20 finishing early and not having a season this year. This year it would have not really made sense to introduce a new structure next season with so much uncertainty. So we think that a significant amount of those clubs would have been promoted anyway, of those 10 extra clubs. So you would think they were planning for rises through the leagues. And I think we just need to monitor next season for implementation, that everyone that is moved up to a higher level is capable of doing that, both financially and otherwise. But theoretically, there should be more travel for some, but even some of those promoted clubs will not see significant increases in travel because of the flattening of the pyramid.
Yeah. So those 10 clubs, they're going into a 3 division structure of sort of what was National 2. And is that regionally based, or? Yeah.
So the structures are National 1, National 2, Level 3 and 4, and in fact Level 5 and Level 6 will be designed on a regional basis. So the review had 4 principles to its heart. One was the player centricity and the player welfare. One was around minimising travel or having appropriate travel times. One around club sustainability, and one around appropriate level of competition. So the leagues will be designed with those principles in mind, but at levels 3 to 6, it will be done on a regional basis to ideally minimise the amount of travel, which may mean in some cases, or will mean, that clubs will see some different clubs on their fixture lists in future, but hopefully that'll provide some excitement and ultimately less travel. So yeah,
definitely, hopefully. So now obviously that's going to have a knock-on effect to the county league. So what changes can you tell us that will happen in those leagues?
Yeah, so starting at level 5 and 6. So at those levels, the maximum size of leagues, and in fact at level 7 and below as well, so the county leagues, has been capped at 12. So a lot of those leagues much further down the pyramid are that size or less anyway, but clearly the biggest change comes at level 5 and 6 and a little bit at level 7. Again, you have the protected breaks at Christmas and through the season. And we've also proposing to introduce a new cup format, as I referenced at the top. So that'll be delivered at the end of the league season, based on your league position. It'll be optional entry for clubs, and they'll only need to let us know sort of halfway through the season. So, if it's the right thing for them to do, their players want to play in a knockout offer, then they've got a better chance of judging whether it's the right thing. The idea of being that could end with a community game finals events, a series of finals, ideally in the same week or same day, which we can have a real celebration of community rugby in April. So they're the main changes there. We've also had a agreement to introduce or relax the introduction around lower 15s in the leagues at level 7 and below. So they're already allowed in the leagues where the agreement exists with the county or the divisional organising committee in certain places. So in London and South East, for example, and the South West, they already have lower 15s. But this was to offer the option nationally for that to happen, where those teams can fulfill the relevant criteria and where it supports the local playing offer. So whilst that's been agreed, there's a bit to work to do there in implementation, just to be sensitive to certain local needs where maybe it might not be seen as such a desirable thing to happen. So yeah, they're the main changes at those levels, I think. There's also the intention to try and reduce. This wasn't an explicit part of the recommendation, but an intention to try and reduce the churn in leagues. Because obviously, if you've reduced the size of leagues, then you may have to look at the numbers promoted and relegated, and to try and keep that club sustainability, so clubs aren't moving all over the shop every single year, which can be quite damaging to some clubs, going up, coming straight back down, and then falling through the leagues. So yeah, hopefully a bit of variety and a change, and players and clubs are going to welcome that when the time comes.
Oh, hopefully, the time will be soon. Hopefully, so that, yeah, sort of out of the three, then finally, I guess, whilst social rugby is not necessarily in the national leagues and the county leagues, how will this affect sort of the I don't want to call them the bottom of the rung teams, but the bottom of the ladder teams, the bottom of the pyramid? How will it affect all of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. For those teams and clubs at the lower end of the pyramid, I mean, yeah, they're going to see a revamped cup offer, a revamped knockout offer. There's going to be some consistency to the leagues being within the county boundaries, but with that cap on numbers of clubs within each league. So I think there'll be a bit of new news there at those levels. And then obviously for social rugby outside the pyramid, so in merit leagues or friendly fixtures, if we can fix or see an improvement in the numbers of players, and just holding steady in the first 15s in the pyramid, it should have a knock-on positive effect on low 15s being able to maintain their social players. And I would hope that some of the experiences we've had over the last few months will really actually support some of that social rugby. So players haven't had a lot of rugby, but I'm seeing already a lot of anecdotal evidence of clubs really thinking differently about the playing offer for those kinds of players. So you've had a lot of Friday night fixtures, back-to-back fixtures in the day because the weather's a bit better at the moment. So as we're starting to open up again, I think that whole social, more flexible playing offer at those levels with slightly amended regulations, whether it's the game on regulations to allow matches to happen with 13, 14 players. So
or they've used Philly boots.
Sorry?
Or they've used
yeah
Philly boots to find a
100%.
We'll see.
100%.
We'll see. Hopefully they will. So what for you then? What does the next 12 months sort of look like in terms of getting all the information about what is actually going to happen the following season sort of put together and out there?
Yeah, so we've I mean, we're looking ahead positively for the next 12 months. We did a survey in February, March time, and it was pleasing to see that around 90% of players said they can't wait to come back to rugby. Anecdotally, the numbers at clubs, particularly in age grade, have been pretty positive over the last couple of weeks. I think people are just keen to have something different to do coming out of lockdown and back to the social. We've got a good summer program in place to, allow clubs and players to play should they wish to, but also to get that balance with protecting player welfare, because you don't want a 15-month season coming up in this season.
Especially on the cricket pitches during the summer.
Yeah, exactly. We know there's a few at-risk groups, whether that's some of the more social players or perhaps teenagers that, you know, found other things to do in lockdown, or we know that front five players haven't had as many opportunities to play because it's been mainly non-contact. So we're encouraging and working with clubs and CBs to look at specific options for those groups of players, really building up to hopefully a great return of community rugby in the first weekend in September, when we can all celebrate return of the leagues, return of the clubs fully opening up. So yeah, that's the next 3 to 4 months, I think. And then beyond that, we've got hopefully continued growth in the women's game with a Rugby World Cup in move to the following year. But that's a real focal point for us to promote the female game alongside implementing the male review. And we're constantly looking at the formats of the game as well, because we know non-contact has actually been, largely speaking, the only thing you could play in the last 12 months. We've had some adapted laws, obviously, which has been good. But we've seen a growth in non-contact, and I think that offers an option for growth in the future as well. So yeah, lots to be positive about, but obviously keeping an eye and working with clubs and counties to ensure that they can return safely and successfully.
Perfect. Look, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So thank you, Ben, for joining us, and hopefully that has put some meat on the bones for everybody that sort of had a few questions to ask and things like that. So I really appreciate you giving up your time this morning to have a chat with us. Hopefully we'll go down the player retention rabbit hole one day soon, over the summer, over a beer, and we'll thrash out some ideas, I'm sure. But so I'm looking forward to that. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you down the road.
Cheers. Thanks, Sean.